This barn, we're actually eliminating that overshoot for structural reasons. The wall behind me with all the stonework and all that plywood that's temporarily there just to help cover some of our woodwork, that wall has been relocated. It's actually been moved closer to me by about 6 feet. It structurally now will support the exterior walls and roof better than it had when it was first built. And of course inside, we will supplement that relocated wall with another timber that runs the length of the barn with a few posts under that. We'd like to think when we're finished, the barn will be even better than it was when it was first put together.
The society we live in dates back to the 1700s, the national essence of our country. And if you go back and think about what our forefathers did, they established this great constitution and this great society that people all over the world want to participate in. Another facet of our society that evolved back then was construction methods, both in furniture and in the buildings that they built. And over the years, many of those have deteriorated because of the natural aging process, but there are a few of them still around. In many cases today, they've not been taken care of. If you drive around the farms in Frederick County, it's really amazing. You can see the ones that are still farms because the buildings are being maintained. But the ones that are about to be converted into housing projects, the farmers no longer have an economic use for them, and they start to deteriorate. We are actually losing an extremely important part of our culture. And it's very important if somebody has an element of that culture that they try to maintain it, they try to restore it. So the next generation and the generation after them will be able to understand and appreciate what our forefathers did for themselves, but did for us. It's the very essence of this country, of this society, that each generation leaves the next generation better off, but also gives them an appreciation for what our forefathers did. And if we destroy these, we're going to lose an extremely valuable and important part of our culture. So projects like this are very important. And anybody that can afford to buy one of these properties ought to also understand that they've got a responsibility to try and pass this on to the next generation. I am absolutely convinced that my grandchildren's children will be able to appreciate this barn as much as I do, because I am virtually certain that it, God willing, and no catastrophes, it should still be standing here another 140 years from now.
This particular barn is especially interesting in that it has been here since the very early 1800s and was actually part of the Battle of South Mountain. As we repaired this barn, we found some slugs embedded into the timbers from the battle, some of the old lead slugs from the Battle of South Mountain. This barn had fallen into serious disrepair as sections of its roof had blown off. And the barn had decayed to the point where the roof really couldn't just be put back. A lot of repairs had to be made for that to happen. So it sat, and it sat for a very long time as timbers continued to rot, making the cost of repairing it even higher and subjecting it to collapsing. As we worked through this barn to repair it, we reconstructed the floor and a lot of the floor joists in here to a strength now that we can bring tractors and skid loaders and other farm equipment in and out of this building on the second floor as the barn was originally used. Some other really cool things about this barn is that it is all hand-hewn timbers. Most all of those are black walnut. As we came to this barn to repair it, we were still working with the original siding on the barn. There were boards on the side of this barn that were over 20 inches wide. If you could imagine for just a minute what this looked like when it was new. All that black walnut, hand-hewn, with yellow pine, 20 and 21 inch wide boards up against it. The smell of that and the look of that from inside or out, it's pretty fascinating to me. There's a standing seam metal roof on this building. All those pieces of metal are all seamed together tightly. And what's happening is the sun shines on this section or that section and it gets a little warm and it wants to expand and you hear a pong. And then later when it cools down, you'll hear a ping. Sometimes on cloudy days like this, the sun is behind a cloud for a minute or two and then comes back out. It's constantly ping, pang, pong, changing like that. It's just a pretty interesting thing. They call that oil canning. You can actually see it in the roof if you watch sometimes from a distance. Some of the very simple old construction techniques you'll find in this barn and many of them. For example, in the basement of this barn, there are many huge posts. You'll find 8-inch and 10-inch square timbers that are carrying the weight of the building. Down through the center, those posts are just bearing on a big flat rock. The ground in these barns underneath would never really freeze because the barns were full of animals and bedding, straw and manure, and just the heat and the warmth from all those large animals and then that insulated material on the ground, it didn't freeze. So those rocks lying flat on the ground, they were fine. Now that a lot of our barns are vacant, there's animals and that bedding are no longer there. The ground does freeze under those rocks now and does sometimes cause problems for the structure itself. Often those rocks are just flat and the post just bears right straight on it. When we repair a barn, we try to get a piece of rubber in between there to prevent moisture from coming up, or termites. Even through a hairline fracture, termites will work their way through that crack and go right through that rock, or concrete. Termites are amazing little insects that do tremendous damage, and you'll never even know they're in there because they go right through the rock. That piece of rubber helps prevent that termite from getting through. We don't know exactly when this barn was built, but approximately 1820 to 1840. That's a 20-year spread. It's difficult sometimes to specifically nail down a time. The people who built it are long gone. The people who paid for that, they're all gone. Until we would research documents, tax records, titles and deeds to the property, family records and financial records, maybe who they paid and how much they paid that person. We really don't know exactly when it was built.